5 a.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. Board members with me are to my far left, Dee Dee Diadamo. Next to her, Vice Chair Fran Spivey-Weber. To my right, Board Member Tam Doduk. And to her right, Board Member Steve Moore. Mr. Howard, will you please introduce the staff?
Thank you. Assisting the board today are Janine Townsend and Courtney Davis. To my left is Michael Lawford, Chief Counsel, and to my right, John Bishop and Karen Turgovich, Chief Deputies.
Terrific, thank you. For those of you who don't know the emergency evacuation procedure, if you hear a noise that sounds like an emergency sound, it probably is, look for the exit nearest you, both lighted and non-lighted. Take your stuff, go. Our assembly point is in Cesar Chavez Park across the street. If you wait there, you'll find out when the all clear comes in to come back. You can obviously go wherever you want, but I'll take a triple espresso macchiato to anybody who goes to Starbucks during it. The meeting is being webcast and recorded, so please speak into the microphone when you come up. This is harder to do than it seems. You have to pretend you're a rock star and really get close to it or it doesn't pick up. And finally, if you could turn all your cell phone and electronic devices to silent, that would be terrific. Okay. With that, we're on to the public forum where the board is going to hear from any person wishing to speak about a matter not pending before the board. I have three comments on the Eel River project, which is great. It's coming up later, but I'm happy to have you guys talk right now in public comment since you signed up that way. So first would be Patrick Higgins.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Patrick. Nice to see you.
Felicia, good morning, members of the board. I am the Eel River Recovery Project volunteer coordinator, and I just wanted to introduce you briefly to a project that we're planning with your staff at the request of the North Coast Regional Board. Materials I've given to Janine, I include our brochure. It shows that actually we're grassroots driven. The citizens of the basin are really concerned about water pollution, water diversion, loss of stream flow, toxic algae, and the fish. And so we have actually gotten programs together that include citizen monitoring, so we can go out and take data and actually establish what is the condition of the watershed. And that has actually promoted people to come to the conclusion that toxic algae in the eel and the other problems that afflict it that make it less than swimmable, drinkable, and fishable are actually a lot related to water diversion. And also water pollution are related to kind of a newer wave of agricultural activity in the eel. So today, I also provide for you an indication of the grassroots support in letters from the Wiyot tribe, from the Humboldt County supervisors, from the Mendocino County supervisors, from the Eel River Russian River Commission, from the Six Rivers National Forest. And there are many small water districts that also favor this project because we would render them technical assistance. This would not just basically allow us to implement what's called for in Eel River TMDL, and that is comprehensive temperature monitoring, so we can basically do trend monitoring over time. We want to go out there and talk to people about water conservation and water pollution prevention because we think that within the culture of the eel, people are receptive, and that the newcomers and the folks that are operating in an unlawful way and in a way that's extremely destructive to the environment have no support from the local community. So as you guys move forward with enforcement and cleanup and abatement that's much needed, you also need a proactive program where we reach out to landowners throughout the eel who are of goodwill, and we start to get more water back in the creek. That's your TMDL remediation. We start to do this trend monitoring where we build it in as part of the culture. Part of what we're requesting is that you might buy field equipment for students in the Van Dusen River, and that's because we have a More Kids in the Woods grant from the Forest Service. We have 500 kids in the stream. They're learning about salmon spawning and about what's going on with the Van Dusen, and then they will take water temperature gauges home over the summer and come back and study the results next year. And you know, it's pretty sleepy out there. The kids are really, really receptive when you connect them with the outdoors. So this is a project where if you guys can give us some money, then we can do monitoring that you guys otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. And we believe that we're working with citizens and providing them the scientific guidelines both instills confidence in them, but it also allows their neighbors to kind of argue the facts of the case. We're not talking about who dried it up. We're talking about, is it drying up? And then when we establish that scientifically and statistically, with the help of a state board grant that was recommended by the North Coast Regional Board, then we'll be able to empower the community, really, to Clean Water Act, swimmable, drinkable, fishable. You know, you make a buck, but your kid can go to the river and the dog doesn't die.
Right.
We're looking forward to working with you. This has been in negotiation between your staff and the North Coast Regional Board staff for about 6 months. We've almost been calendared. We just thought we'd say hi, answer any questions if you have them. We look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, we have Bruce Hillbach-Barger from the Eel River Recovery Project.
Hi, thank you. My name is Bruce Evan Hillbach-Barger. I'm from Round Valley, Covelo, in the Middle Fork of the Eel. My primary emphasis is on the cultural component of the question. How's the community going to respond? And I want to highlight the enthusiasm of different segments of my community for the issues that are raised in this project. I have been organizing volunteers to clean up grow sites on the National Forest and other public lands for the last 4 years. And for me, one of the important factors involved in using volunteers is that people put their hands on the issue and they deal with it. They learn by doing. The makeup of my volunteers is probably more diverse than you would expect. Round Valley is a tribal community. 2 of my volunteers are tribal elders. 2 of my core volunteers are actually 72-year-old tribal elders. I think he's 73 now. But anyway, also hardware store owners. A person I know is a grower because after the last cleanup, he said, I'm paying my marijuana tax. And an entire crew from 10 Mile Creek, which is one of our first target areas. We're trying to lay the groundwork in Round Valley and do the core work in the demonstration project in 10 Mile. A group of 6 people came from 10 Mile to a cleanup a year and a half ago and said, how many more slots do you have on your next one that we can bring more people, because we're really interested in the issue. The second area where I've seen incredible response. Last spring, I started speaking to people informally, especially grow store and those kind of folks, owners, about education for the community. And the response I got was, I had a preliminary pamphlet. The response I got was, is there more of this? Can we get tailgate presentations on this? How much information can you provide? And I want to quote this directly. Remarkably, actually 2 of the folks from these grow stores said, we would like to sell less in order to save our watershed. Give us some technical assistance. Finally, recently I spoke on our local community radio station, which has a potential listening audience of 2,300 people. I spoke about my project looking for volunteers, but I also spoke about the watershed. I've had numerous people come up to me and say, I changed my practices. I thought about my response to this in the watershed. I've had other people come up to me and say, when is more information coming? What can we do about this? So I want to let you know there's a hunger, or I should say a thirst for information on how to do this better from all segments of the community. I think you can join us and empower what we're doing, and we can empower what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Anna Burkus. This is cool.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here to talk about the Eel River Water Conservation and Pollution Abatement Program. I have a master's degree in hydrology, and I'm a general engineering contractor. I grew up in Mendocino and Humboldt counties. I've worked my entire career on watershed science and Samonid issues. A few years back, I realized that without water conservation and sustainable agriculture, we were not adequately addressing the issues in the watershed. Since then, I started my company, Village Ecosystems, where I've worked to integrate the two. the Eel River, to adequately address the issues in the Eel River, we must address contaminant issues of toxic algae and temperature, as well as low flow. Unlike other pollution issues, you can't solve these problems by hauling away dump truck loads of contaminants. The solution is increased flow. We must address issues of toxic algae, temperature, and low flow through technical assistance, and site visits give us our best method for reaching these goals. Each water conservation situation is unique, and citizens need on-the-ground analysis to adequately make successful, lasting changes. Through technical assistance, they will be able to lead with groundbreaking projects in water conservation and agriculture that will inspire a cultural shift. I have a professional approach to working with farmers, and I feel safe in Mendocino and Humboldt County backwoods. These are my people, and this is an inside solution to a pollution problem in the Eel River. It is the best solution. I am excited to work with my community and your staff on these cutting-edge solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. It's not a controversial issue, I think, but it's really inspiring to be able to start the week this way. So thank you very much. I started my career as a volunteer coordinator and organizer at the community level, and I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm impressed with all of your eloquence about the power of combining forces to leverage change on the ground. So thank you very much. Do we have, by chance, other speakers on the agenda later on this issue? We have it, oh no, it's not here today, is it? When is it coming up? We have elk today, not this. Well, let me
It'll
just...
be on the agenda in January.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for giving us that heads up, and we'll look forward to it. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. It's cool. And next, we'll consider the minutes from the November 19th board meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I abstained because I wasn't here. All right. Time for board member reports. Who wishes to start? I will start.
I've been on vacation and I went to Mexico, so I have nothing to report since last board meeting.
All right. Dee, do you have anything?
Okay, so
Thank you for that report.
about a week and a half ago, I went to Orange County Great Park, stormwater capture and reuse program that is also utilizes base reuse from El Toro Marine Base, and lots of opportunities out there, recreational and development. And this project was just, it was just a great day to see all the swales and ponds that they have for stormwater capture and reuse. And on their PowerPoint here, I just thought I'd point out that they have a quote from Francis B.V. Weber, a major breakthrough in cost-effective stormwater capture and use. So that says it better than anything that I could say. I encourage you all to go there. And to see this big orange ball that they have also, that it's a ball, a big helium balloon that takes you up and gives you an opportunity to have a great view of the area. Then the other item that I wanted to report on is that yesterday I went on a subsidence tour of the site that is on the border of Madera and Merced counties near the bypass for the San Joaquin River, a flood control bypass that has seen 5-foot subsidence over the last 4 years. And I sent you a note on this. I guess you'll be at Aqua and the exchange contractors who have led an effort to deal with this issue through some voluntary agreements in the short term, and in the long term, hopefully pull together the landowners that are pumping They're not involved in a water district right now, but the idea would be to get them to organize and to come up with a variety of solutions, getting some wet year water and doing some water banking and some land fallowing. But the amazing thing is that I first heard about this about 18 months ago, and that's around the same time that these water districts realized, and the San Joaquin River Restoration Plan, which would be impacted by the subsidence in this area. And quickly, the parties that were impacted and the parties that were doing the pumping, they quickly pulled together, and they have been able to not reverse the subsidence, but at least slow it down. So it was going at a rate in the area which was the greatest impact, over a foot a year, and now they're seeing about 6 inches. So hopefully they can get that down to 0, and you'll hear more at Aqua on this.
Terrific. Yeah, Steve and I actually went on that tour sometime last year, so it's great to hear what they were able to do. They were just mobilizing at the time, so. Anyone over here?
Yes, it was nice to hear from the North Coast Regional Board at our public forum today. The North Coast Regional Board met for 2 days a couple weeks ago on November 20th, 21st. Some notable actions there included adopting NPDES permits for the communities of Santa Rosa and the town of Windsor there. The issue there is the discharges are to Laguna de Santa Rosa, which is impaired for nutrients and other pollutants. And so the Laguna Water Reclamation Plant there in Santa Rosa is one of the state's most advanced treatment systems because of the receiving water limitations there. But the issue, about 5 years ago when the permit was adopted, there was a no net loading provision for nutrients as the TMDL is being developed. Well, 5 years have gone by, the TMDL is under development. They've learned some interesting things, such as the system is more limited by phosphorus discharges than by nitrogen, which, in California is interesting because a lot of we tend to assume it's a nitrogen limited situation. So actually phosphorus is the driver through that's part of what we've learned the last 5 years. And but there is a regulatory matter of an existing permit limit that's based on no net loading. And the debate about the reissuance was, do you preserve that effluent limit basis, or do you, what kind of changes would you make knowing that there's a TMDL in process? So that was the nature of the discussion that was extensive. But in the end, they preserved the no net loading provision to comply with anti-backsliding provisions of NPDES regulations. So it was a very rich discussion, but also a lot of good technical information and a lot of creativity going on in that basin, looking at trying to control, loading of phosphorus and nitrogen from the most cost-effective sources, or cost-effective way to the sources that would be most efficient. So that's an ongoing issue, I believe, of statewide significance, because these type of pollutant trading arrangements in the watersheds represent some of our cutting edge, I think, in terms of pollution abatement around the state. So I think it's a place to keep an eye on, especially as the TMDLs are developed. And then they also had an extensive hearing on a basin plan amendment that's proposed a temperature policy for the Eel River, Mattole River, and Navarro River watersheds. This follows on the TMDLs that were adopted by US EPA several years ago, and these are the implementation plans for temperature impairment in these rivers. And so there's extensive discussion about, and technical discussions about the maintenance of shade in riparian systems, and different approaches from the forestry side of the debate versus the water quality side. And these discussions need to continue to sort of refine the Basin Plan Amendment proposal that's before the Regional Board. So there was some extensive discussion on that item. And finally, on November 26th, I did attend and speak at the Mountain Counties Water Resources Association meeting, along with Secretary John Laird, of the Natural Resources Agency. He spoke more on the Bay Delta Conservation Plan process that's is ongoing, and I spoke to issues of integrated water management and collaboration and our recent activities here at the State Water Board. There was at least 40, 50 folks there. There were county supervisors and water district board members and general managers around the Sierra. So it was a very productive discussion. And we certainly appreciate those opportunities to learn and listen and share what we're up to. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks.
Just one quick item, a shout out and a note of thanks to the members of the Nuclear Review Committee and also to our Chief Deputy, Jonathan Bishop. I attended their last meeting, and this was a committee that we formed as part of the one-stew cooling policy. And this was, I believe, their first meeting that I attended, and I was very impressed by the level of discussion. And given that the item will be coming back before us in the spring, I think it was an especially good timing in terms of their review of the special studies that is being conducted by PG&E for the Diablo Canyon Power Plant. There was obviously a lot of discussion about various aspects of the feasibility for Diablo Canyon in complying with our one-stew cooling policy, and I thought Jonathan Bishop handled the, at time, heated, engaged discussion very well, and he gave some instructions to the committee that I believe will serve us very well when it comes back to us early next year for deliberation. And on that note, I've been putting off a visit to Diablo Canyon for actually several years now, simply because it's so hard to get to. But after attending that meeting, hearing the discussion, and starting to read the reports that have been submitted to us, I think that is definitely on my calendar for early next year before the item comes back to us. And I believe you went, didn't you?
Yep, yesterday. Oh. I'm not glowing or anything. Thank you all. I haven't been here in a while, and I suspect a couple of the things I've done, I'm sure Steve talked about our East Bay Mud Walnut Creek trip as part of our drinking water treatment plant tour that we've all been doing. And you all probably talked about the human right to water convening at the last meeting as well. I just want to thank the board members. In addition to these visits, people have been going out and doing listening sessions on both our groundwater concept paper, along with the wonderful Karen and her team and others, as well as meetings with a variety of stakeholders on the administration's water action plan. Dee covered quite a few of them in ag, which I really, really appreciate. I've been doing that as well, and it's been a very rewarding set of meetings with folks to talk about water more generally in an integrated way, and all the issues about water, and where we really do need to get in a much more integrated and coordinated combination of water quality, water supply, et cetera, around the country, and a lot of feedback that we need to do more on upper watersheds, along with other feedback, which is just reinforced by our public comment today, which is great. I also went out and did a series of farm tours last week outside the Fresno area, really down to Corcoran, and it was interesting because it was a range of farms, from very large, very well funded, highly technologically sophisticated farms to very small Hmong and Laotian subtenant farmers on very small plots. And I know that all the members over their various years of service have been doing that, but I just encourage them, and I encourage us to send our staff out to do more of these trips, because I spent a lot of time in agriculture in the 90s, and it is very different today, both with the adoption of technology by almost everyone but the most poor and small, or the most elderly and a little bit stuck in their ways, in an understandable way. I don't mean it as a critique, but you know, it's not your mother's ag anymore. So I really do encourage people to go out and see the diversity of what's happening, as well as people's response both to environmental water and other things, as well as this new generation that's coming into farm management. It was actually very inspiring and terrific. It really made me wish I wasn't on a low-carb diet, though, because I saw a lot of really good vegetables and fruits. So that was great. The other thing I would just mention is that I am going to get a chance to go to Region 7 and the Salton Sea next week, and I'm going to do an all-hands meeting there. I still want to get to your board meetings out in the field, so I encourage you to, if there's a meeting you can't make and you want me to cover, that would be great. But I'm at least going to meet with the staff out there when I'm down there, and then I'll be at Aqua this week talking both about groundwater and the water action plan. Is anyone else going to Aqua this week? Terrific. Okay, so that's what's coming up. Let's move on then to our uncontested items. We have quite a few of them. Do we have a sense that they are in fact uncontested? Is there anyone here to contest an uncontested item? All right.
I do have a quick question that hopefully staff can answer on item number 6.
Okay.
When we approved the funding for this cleanup and abatement account project, I believe it was intended to include matching funds from a series of organizations, including the Humboldt Redwood Company, the State Coastal Conservancy, and other agencies. Do we know if those matching funding came through?
Well, I don't.
There, Julie was looking things up, so I was waiting.
I believe it was Humboldt Redwood, State Coastal Conservancy, Redwood Community Action Agency, for a total funding of $697,040.
Right. Thanks, Tam. Julie Rosardo, State Water Board. We can get back to you with the exact status of those match funds. They're all coming from different sources. There are some Prop 50 coastal non-point source funds that have already been allocated, but there are some matching funds that are expected or in progress. So we'll be happy to get work with the regional board to get the exact status of those and get back to you.
Thank you. With that, then I will abstain on this item.
Do I have a motion?
I move the adoption of items 3, 4, and 5. I don't know, I think we have to take 6 out and then come back to it.
Do we?
I don't know. Okay, then 3, 4, 5, and 6. I move adoption. Thank you.
Second?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So would you feel more comfortable if we put that item over? And if we did, would it cause any hardship? Is that just offering it up?
Do you need it, Julie?
I don't need it delay. I'm just not. I remember when this item came before us, I had some issues associated with it, and the matching aspect was one that I was concerned about. I'm fine with you all proceeding. It's just that until I have that information, I'd rather abstain.
And I feel comfortable going ahead because we're extending the time, which gives more time for the matching to come in. But I do think we need a report, at least through the executive director's report, as to what the status of the matching is.
But there was a reason we directed the board, the staff, in the resolution we adopted earlier this year, to bring it back to us in December to consider rescission if the project has not proceeded. So personally, I'm not comfortable with it, so I'm abstaining if you decide to proceed with it.
And just to be clear, Member Doduk, you want to abstain only from 6? Because otherwise, the motion that, so I really would recommend that Members
separated
Spivey
out.
Weber
I think
separate
so,
it
too.
out, and we have a motion on 3 through 5,
Okay.
followed by a separate motion for item 6.
Okay.
I move adoption of items 3 through 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those pass. What shall we do about item 6? Is there any reason not to bring it back, or is there?
I move adoption of item 6.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
I'll abstain. I just don't know enough about it.
All right.
So, but you have enough
No, I'm going
Yeah.
to say okay, but we got to make sure it comes back right away. So can we get a report back within this week? Okay. All right. Carries with that instruction. All right, we have an informational item, item 7.
Yes, item 7 is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Annual Report, and Christopher Stevens will be giving the annual report.
Good morning, Chair Marcus and members of the board. Christopher Stevens, Supervising Engineer with the Division of Financial Assistance, here to talk a little bit with you about the annual report for last fiscal year, 12-13 fiscal year. If I can get this to advance here. Can we get a little help on the... So just going to talk about 3 aspects of the program this morning: financial results, programmatic results, and then spend a few minutes talking about recent changes and future changes in the program. So if we could go to the next slide here. So financial results for the year ending June 30th, 2013. Just to kind of give you some stats on the program overall. Program first made a loan in 1989. Since then, we've financed about $6.6 billion. That equates to about 650 different agreements. I looked the other day, we've had approximately 300 unique applicants, and about 40% of those have had repeat, they're repeat customers for us. So of the funds that we've had since the beginning, 92% of them have been dispersed at this point. As of June 30th, we had about just slightly less than $1 billion in outstanding commitments to projects that are underway. 95% of the financing that we've done over the years has been for wastewater infrastructure, and about 5% for stormwater, non-point source, or estuary projects. For the current year, 2012-2013, we financed 29 projects, about $275 million. That was somewhat of a down year for us. Our average over the last 6 or 7 years has been about $450 million. Project-wise, we've been in the range of about 35 to 45 projects. So number of projects, we had a good number of projects, maybe slightly lower there, but they all tended to be small projects. We only had a handful that were over $20 million. Despite that, we provided quite a bit of subsidy to folks, about a little over $80 million. That's the difference in what it would have cost applicants to go out and finance that on the market versus what it cost to finance it with Clean Water SRF. Disbursement rate was pretty consistent with the past few years, about $341 million, and about $40 million of that was principal forgiveness. Those are funds that we get from the federal government that don't have to be repaid, essentially a grant. And then one very important aspect of the program is that, of course, every year we have audited financial statements. An independent auditor comes in. We had no adverse findings or observations on our financial statements this year. Of course, one of the prominent issues for the program, for all programs, SRF programs nationwide, both clean water and drinking water, has been unliquidated obligations. These are funds that have been given to the states, granted to the states, but they haven't been drawn and dispersed to projects. And so that's been a prominent issue for programs nationwide. I'm glad to report that we're on the low end of that. That's not an issue for us. Nationwide, for the Clean Water SRF programs, unliquidated obligations have been in the range of 0 to 14%. As of June 30th, we were at 1.7%, so we're at the low end of that. It did jump up a little bit when we got our 2013 grant to about 5%, but those are the first funds that go out when somebody submits a disbursement request, so that number will come down pretty quickly over the year. And the other goal that EPA has established for the programs is to have at most 2 grants open, and at this point we just have the equivalent of 1 grant that we haven't dispersed at this point. So like I say, we're doing well there. Now if I could go to the next slide, Another aspect of the program that's kind of related to this is we still continue to have a high cash balance in the program. So we're good on the federal funds, but we still continue to have quite a bit of cash in the program. Now, don't get me wrong, cash is nice to have. I'm not complaining necessarily about having cash, but bear in mind that cash doesn't provide any water quality. So, if you look at the purple line there, even with increasing levels of financing, they're pretty clear uptrend on what we've been able to finance. We still have a lot of cash in the program. So that tells me as a program manager that we can finance even more projects. And so that's really where the program, where I've tried to focus on the program and to finance more projects and to use that cash flow more effectively.
One request, and this is really for all 5 of us, is for all of us to become much better advocates and educators about this fund as we go out and meet with people, because I go almost every meeting I go to, they talk about infrastructure and the need for infrastructure financing, and I always say something about our SRF program, but I feel like it's mostly, a sentence or two. It's not really a major request that people actually come in and see you or see whoever they're supposed to see. And I just think we could do a lot better helping you get the information out on this program.
I appreciate any help. If we could go to the next slide. So let me talk a little bit about programmatic results. As I indicated, we financed 29 projects, a little over $275 million. Almost all of that was for wastewater infrastructure. There was one very minor non-point source project. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but very small dollar amount. Of course, small disadvantaged communities and disadvantaged communities in general is a big issue for the board as well as the program, and so we did finance a number of small disadvantaged communities. 8 out of those 29 agreements were for our Category 1, the traditional small disadvantaged community. $15.6 million in principal forgiveness, $12 million for our small community grant fund, and then $19 million in extended term 30-year financing. And then another 4 projects were in our Category 2 other disadvantaged communities. So you can see 12 out of the 29, or about 45% or so of the projects that we financed were for disadvantaged communities in one way or another.
Maybe this is a place I could interject. One of my main questions in reading the report, which, by the way, I really enjoyed, nice and brief and easy to understand. It was an excellent report. But I'll go ahead and point out these obvious numbers, the 99.9 versus 0.1, and as far as wastewater, which was the traditional program anyway. But this board's interested in supporting innovative, low-impact development, non-point source type projects. And I know in your marketing proposal, you're trying to target these potential recipients of the funding. Could you comment on, to your knowledge or perception, what kind of barriers, if any, we're seeing in terms of these local governments applying for SRF? Is it just because they don't know that stormwater can qualify for this? Because it's infrastructure-related issues. And what am I missing as a board member as far as connecting the dots out there?
Well, I think some of that is a marketing issue of letting folks know that is a viable source. But the biggest single hurdle is having a revenue source to repay a loan. So stormwater fees, there are a few communities that do have them, but they're few and far between. And so, yes, if there was a revenue source there, that would be a huge area for us to explore.
What about conservation? Because you can use your ratepayer dollars to repay conservation. The big problem about going out and getting bond funding for conservation is that you can't, it's often not considered a structure. And so you can't, you have to carry it on your annual rate base. you can't stretch it out over 30 years. So do we have that problem for
I'm
conservation?
not sure I understand when you say conservation, water conservation? or-
Like putting in sprinklers for, low-impact sprinklers for lawns, or taking out sod, or taking out grass and having something less water intensive.
Certainly from a programmatic perspective, I mean, that would fit right into the non-point source plan, I think. I think the legal issues of, being able to use that revenue source, as you say, for that type of project, I'm not, that would be a question mark in my mind, but that's something we could certainly look at.
I'm looking back, we need to be able to do this if we can.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something, if local governments felt comfortable using their water rates for this kind of thing, it's certainly something we could look at. And I know that when we've looked at smaller projects, Christopher can correct me if I'm wrong, making loans to municipalities that then pass along these benefits to ratepayers might be something that could potentially be feasible, so long as the local governments were actually comfortable using their water rates to support this type of thing. But as Christopher notes, we run into potential Prop 218 issues, but we can certainly look at it.
So we do have a couple of performance measures for the program. Percent of applications approved for financing in 9 months or less, and then disbursements fulfilled in 30 days or less. That's clearly an area where we need to improve. As I say, increase the pile of those that are clean applications and that can be processed quickly, so that we can focus our energy on those that have issues that have to be addressed, or hurdles that have to be overcome. But that's certainly something we looked at last year in revamping the application process and the application and doing additional streamlining in the program that was approved by the board in May. All of those things should contribute to bringing that number up. And then we will be looking at, we're doing much better on our disbursement fulfillment, of course. That's an area that the program that's very well developed, but clearly we can look at and bring that number up as well. So if I can go to the next slide here. We've already touched on this a little bit. Of course, we recognize with the program that people have choices for how to finance their projects. They can finance the pay-as-they-go or go into the bond market. So this is one aspect that we recognized several years ago when we had Northbridge Environmental come in and do a strategic management review, is that we need to put more emphasis on marketing and outreach of the program. So we've done quite a bit of that over the last 4 or 5 years. And one of the key things that we do every year is we work with the California Financing Coordinating Committee, just an ad hoc group of other agencies, state and federal agencies that have similar financing programs. We do a series of road shows, and we have a common inquiry form that we use. And so we did do that again this year, six funding fairs in 2013. We also provided information at a number of different forums, AQUA, CWEA, CASA, throughout the year. Environmental benefits is, of course, one of the benefits of the program is that there's a wide variety of projects that we can finance. That makes it somewhat difficult to, capture what the environmental benefits of the project are. So the next 2 slides kind of illustrate that. If I could go to the next slide. This categorizes the funding by the needs categories that are defined by EPA. As you can see, quite a number of different categories there: advanced treatment, secondary treatment, sewer system rehabilitation, recycled water distribution. If I could go to the next slide. I realize this is kind of a busy slide here. The takeaway message is that if we look at the projects and what beneficial uses they had a connection to, we can see that projects generally address multiple beneficial uses. So quite, like I say, this is more qualitative than quantitative, but quite a few different benefits from SRF projects. Lots of color there. So if I could go to the last slide here, let me just spend a few minutes talking about recent and future improvements. As I said, I've already alluded to, you know, in 2012, we took a ground-up look at the application forms, the application process, took a look at the policy, and recommended additional streamlining measures, which the board approved in May of last year. In conjunction with that, we released new application forms, and all of those changes have been fully implemented at the point. So for going forward, we're going to be looking at and, you know, hoping to see that number of that percentage of applications that are approved in 9 months or less, see that number go up. And just to add on to that, on October 3rd, we also made available the FAST system. FAST is our online application system that we've been using for the grant programs for many years. That is also available for applicants to submit their applications electronically to us. You know, I touched on earlier the high cash balance and creating more demand in the program. So another thing that the board approved on November 19th, just recently, was offering extended term financing for all projects. That, you know, I expect that to have an effect on increasing the demand of the program. That application has been submitted to EPA. We're hoping to get, you know, feedback from them pretty quickly. We had already coordinated with them in advance, and so they were aware of it. This is the 4th application we've submitted, so my hope is that this month we'll get the go-ahead for that. And then our plan is to release a press release to tout that. We've already touched on marketing and outreach. You know, we've beefed that aspect of the program up over the last 5 years or so, but I think there's more we could do there. So one of my goals for this year is to develop a written marketing plan by the end of the year and revamp our website to make that more useful. It's a little disorganized and a little dusty. And then last but certainly not least, you know, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time, assuming that this is approved, this transfer of the drinking water program from DPH over to the Water Board is approved. I expect that I and the staff will be spending quite a bit of time over that, on that over the next couple of years.
In terms of marketing and outreach, I want to make sure that you get into your marketing plan outreach to power companies who have the capacity for matching funds on things like pipes, replacing pipes that are leaking, or replacing pressure valves that allow for more modulated use of pipes, which reduces leakage, and so it's a obvious partnership that would benefit water quality, it would benefit water supply, but it also benefits the GHG reductions that the power companies are looking for. Mm-hmm. And there's a study already that backs up this that the CPUC did several years ago, and there's lots of data that supports it. So of all the things that the power companies may invest in that have to do with water, this is probably at the top of their list. And we should make sure we are, at least they realize who we're working with, and they might want to pitch in.
Mm-hmm. Tam is giving me a quizzical look here, so I'll address the concern I think she's asking me to address, which is mind reader, lawyer, all this. So the SRF...
Actually, let's see if she's correct in assessing my look.
Exactly.
So the Clean Water State Revolving Fund financial assistance is available for three categories of projects. The first is publicly owned treatment works. Mm-hmm. The second is non-point source, and the third is estuary enhancement. So if the power companies are municipal power companies, then we could...
No, no, I'm sorry. The power companies don't own the pipes. The water companies, or the publicly owned companies own the pipes. The power companies are having to provide power to push water through the pipes, and if they can lower their GHG in terms of not having to push so much water because it's leaking, you know, if it's contained, then they reduce their GHG. That's all they're looking for. So it's not, they wouldn't own the pipes.
So it's a marketing effort to the power companies to push the municipalities to apply for this
The
fix it fund.
municipalities would apply for it and would get money from the power companies as well as from us. And it makes a big win-win for everybody.
Did I address your concern?
Thank you,
Soto?
Ms. Hartridge. That was wonderful mind reading.
But I think that does get to a broader question of a marketing plan is who, what, where, when, how, why. You know, who are the people that can use the program? How are we going to get them aware of the program? How are we going to make it easy for them to apply? Those are all aspects of a marketing plan. Definitely.
Well, I also suggest that if we're successful in the Water Action Plan agenda of trying to give municipalities and other water utilities some help and relief on Prop 218, that will also help, because you'll end up with more able to come up with funding sources for things like stormwater. So.
Yeah, that's good. You know, and on building on Fran's point, I do think it's useful for us board members to, in our liaison role, remind the regional boards and the stakeholders in the regions about the availability of this program. And our recent action to make extended term financing available on all applications, I announced that we had supported that and submitted to EPA, to the North Coast 2 weeks ago. And this week, when I visit the Central Coast region, I will again reiterate that. Sometimes, yeah, like you say, just making them aware, communicating, can make a difference. And so I encourage fellow board members to take the opportunity to remind our regional boards of of this program. And it is an asset there that we have that can really benefit clean water.
Christopher, excellent report, and I want to thank you, especially on something. As you know, I've been pushing the whole performance measures thing for a while, and one of the concerns that I first heard with respect to performance measures is, oh my gosh, it'll make us look bad, people will misinterpret it, how can we be doing this? And so I really, really appreciate yours and Liz and the entire division's entire programs and the way that you looked at performance measures, and especially the way that you used and report on your performance measures as simply a tool. It's a tool for us to track what we're doing, and it's a tool for us to identify areas where we can do better and make changes. And I, again, appreciate your use of it, and appreciate, again, your just matter-of-fact way of presenting the performance measures in your report. So thank you.